Hi, my name is Taylor Shelton, and I'll be talking with you today about human sex trafficking. I go to Missouri State University, and I'm an education major. So first, we're going to have to define human sex trafficking. Human sex trafficking is defined as the illegal transportation of people from one area to another for the purpose of sexual exploitation and for the exchange of currency. It's not necessarily just money. It could be goods or other services as well. Anyone is at risk to be affected by sex trafficking, particularly young females, high school age, young adult women, and those who don't speak English very well, especially young ladies who don't speak English very well. Maybe they're from other countries and have moved in, or maybe parents don't speak English at home, so they're English learners. Where is sex trafficking happening? Sex trafficking is happening everywhere. Even in the United States, it's called modern slavery here in the United States. I gathered information from calling agencies and doing research online, and I gathered that the top 4 states for human sex trafficking in the United States right now are California, New York, Texas, and Florida. Part of this is because of the borders or their high population areas, so it's easier to traffic people in and out, people who are coming into this country or trying to leave the country. What does human sex trafficking look like in our society? Oftentimes you're not going to notice because it just blends seamlessly into our society. You may not even notice. It's really hard to see because we don't have the specific telltale signs that they would have had earlier or maybe in other situations. How are victims trafficked? Well, victims are trafficked by many different means. They are gathered on social media. You may have heard of catfishing, pretending to be someone that you're not. So a trafficker may go online and be talking to someone who is young. They may have a different picture. They may create fake accounts and ask them to meet up. They could use dating sites to do this. A lot of social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat are all used for this purpose. Abduction, while this doesn't happen as often, homeless teens are abducted for human sex trafficking the most often. Deception, that kind of plays into all of them, especially with social media. Payment, so they may, a victim may come willingly. Actually, that's what usually happens because the trafficker is going to pay them. They may be offering to pay off debts for their family. They may be offering to pay off their student loans. Lots of things like that. They may be threatening the person. So the trafficker may be threatening to hurt the victim's family or to hurt the victim themselves. And abuse of power is a big one too. This could be like the boss of a company or just any boss, maybe threatening the person's job if they don't do it, things like that. So what does this look like? Joan Reed gives us the insight to 43 different case files in her journal, Entrapment and Enmeshment Schemes Used by Sex Traffickers. And they deal explicitly with human sex trafficking and the entrapment methods used to capture their victims. So a victim may be receiving gifts. They may have been picked up off the street because they didn't have anywhere to go. They didn't have anybody looking out for them. Prostitution is glorified and glamorized. So the trafficker may be promising a luxurious life to the victim to get them to come into that line of work. They may be promising them that they won't have to worry about anything, that they'll have everything that they need, that they won't have to worry about getting another job or going to school. So they're just going to make things look easier. before they go into it. And traffickers try to isolate the victims. They have no one else to go to. So they will strip them away from their families. They'll pull them away from all of their friends so that they they feel like they have nowhere else to turn to. How does sex trafficking go unnoticed? Well, the challenges to identifying and prosecuting sex trafficking cases in the Midwest United States by Andrea Nichols and Aaron Heel reveals some of the tactics used from the eyes of victims and authorities and government officials. Coercion tactics and entrapment techniques are used by traffickers to keep their crimes quiet. So basically, they are just their main goal is to keep the victims quiet. And as long as they can do that, then a lot of times it's going to go undetected. So some coercion tactics that are used by traffickers are manipulation, payment, force, threats. A lot of the things that they use to get them there, they'll use to keep them there. So they may beat their victims. They may drug their victims. They may tell their victims that nobody else wants them. They'll emotionally abuse them, beat them down. They may be sexually abusing one of their victims and not just allowing others to do that. They may be paying them. They may be giving them expensive gifts. So what is being done about human sex trafficking? The Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000 was the first law to address human trafficking, and it's been revised 4 times since then. That's really the only human sex trafficking piece of legislation that is out there to protect victims. The Preventing Sex Trafficking and Strengthening Families Act of 2014 works with children in foster care to help keep them from being pulled into human sex trafficking and exploited, because they are an easier target as they're going from home to home to home, and they may be in an unstable environment. The Justice for Victims of Trafficking Act of 2015 improves the aftermath for trafficking victims. So it gives them benefits and protection. It doesn't really do anything to help them beforehand. It doesn't protect them from getting into sex trafficking in the first place. So legislation has come a long way as far as handling the aftermath of trafficking, but it hasn't really done a lot more to prevent trafficking from happening or making it easier to prosecute traffickers and save victims. So what makes prosecution so hard? Victims often do not cooperate with authorities because they feel threatened. They fear that the benefits are going to be taken away from them. They're afraid that the traffickers are going to hurt their families, kill their families. Traffickers frequently move from place to place because they know that they'll be caught if they stay in the same place. So usually if they feel threatened, they'll just empty out the house and move overnight. It takes time to obtain warrants. Sometimes officials can't just go in and search a home, or it takes time to prove that a crime is actually occurring. Misreports can slow down the process too. If something's wrong, they have to go back and completely restart the case. The definition of trafficking sometimes is a little bit unclear, so it makes it more difficult to prosecute a case and to get a trafficker in the justice system. It's hard to find witnesses because witnesses can be afraid of what the trafficker will do to them or what their friends may do to them, even if they are in prison. And traffickers know how the justice system works and to avoid being caught. Usually traffickers are people who are familiar with the justice system, have been in it before, so they know how it works. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're completely unsuspected people or upstanding citizens, as they might appear. But usually they know how it works. They're extremely smart, and they're going to do what it takes to stay out of it. So how is human sex trafficking legally defined? According to Carrie Liram and Barbara Brentz in their article titled Sociological Perspective on Sex Work and Human Trafficking is defined by the United States Department of Labor as labor induced by force, fraud, or coercion. The definition of trafficking in the sex industry, but not other industries, includes additional stipulations for individuals under 18. When a child under 18 years of age is recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, provided, obtained, or maintained to perform a commercial sex act, providing force or proving force, fraud, or coercion is not necessary for the offense to be characterized as human trafficking. So this definition mostly deals with minors. It doesn't provide a lot of protection for older people who can also be involved just as easily. It deals mostly with kids. So what needs to happen now? Legislation needs to be put into place that allows authorities to take immediate action. It needs to be easier for mandated reporters and just any reporter to report a case. It needs to be taken more seriously. It needs to be acted on immediately because this is a serious case. Sometimes cases are reported and they're not regarded as anything. They're just swept under the rug or put to the side for later. And training needs to be readily available and encouraged for all people. So this could be employers offering training, free training, just open to anybody, training in schools, training on college campuses, all sorts of things would make it easier to help and protect victims. So what can you do to help a victim? First, you can be vigilant. You can be paying attention, watching. If you notice something suspicious, you need to report it immediately. Don't wait. Just do your part and report that. And don't be afraid to do that. You can't hesitate. It might be that person's only chance to get out of the sex trafficking industry. But also stay safe. You don't want to do something dangerous, like attack a trafficker and do something that could put the victim in harm's way or yourself. You don't want to do anything that's going to make the situation worse. What signs you should look for in victims are, there's really quite a few signs that would indicate that there might be some sex trafficking occurring. So maybe the individual doesn't have anything, or maybe they have extremely expensive possessions that seem out of place. You can notice this a lot in a school setting. If a child has absolutely nothing, oftentimes a high school student, they have nothing, and then all of a sudden they're coming to school and they're wearing a $5,000 watch, it doesn't make a lot of sense. That is a red flag. Individuals who seem overly anxious, fearful, or submissive is a sign. Hygiene and medical care that's missing. They may be fearful of other individuals, especially authority members. They maybe they've got some new tattoos, or they don't really seem like it fits them, or maybe physical features have been changed. So maybe having some surgery or work done, that would be a sign. Being extremely tired, unexplained injuries, overly sexualized behavior, especially in kids. This is a big indication. They may be extremely withdrawn. They may have companions that are much older than them. That's a big red flag. And if they're in school, unexplained absences, or even work, unexplained absences is a big sign, especially if they're not willing to tell you where they are or where they were. Traffickers, there are lots of signs to identify traffickers as well. These are just some of the signs, but traffickers may be someone who appears to be an upstanding citizen. They may have none of these signs, or they may have all of them. You just never really know. They may be extremely explosive. So they may have a low tolerance to stress. They may be extremely agitated all the time, overly sexualized behavior.